The other part of my drawing the short straw is I get to speak a little bit about our family. So, of course, Stan's first family was with my two siblings and myself, Audrey and Patricia, who are sitting here. And we got together, talked about some of our thoughts, and so I'm going to try to represent some of them together. But what we thought he meant to us. I think one of the first things he brought us was that learning was expected to be a lifetime activity. It was something you were always expected to be doing. He really loved his books, right? He made a big deal out of taking us to the library, each in turn, to get our first library card. To make a big deal out of that. We were now in the club. It was a big thing. He did not get mad at my sister Patty, who spent many a night under covers with the flashlight, reading well beyond her bedtime. He was willing to let that go. And he practiced what he preached. He always had an enormous pile of books by his bedside, always. And it was kind of daunting. And I asked him, boy, you must be a fast reader. And he said, no, actually, I'm not. I'm actually a very slow reader. But I am persistent. And I want to stay after that because I want to read one book a week for my life. That was his life goal. And he said, if you do that, you'll be exposed to 52 different ways of thinking every year. Imagine that. It stuck with me forever. He liked to teach in every way, too, not just through books. I remember when I was a teenager, he was beginning to get really interested in making sure I understood something about finance. And he was always showing me stuff in the newspaper, stock quotes and interest rates and things like that, just to kind of see if I was getting interested, which, generally speaking, I wasn't at that point. But at one point, he made a point of really showing me how different interest rates were between even a variety of bank accounts and other sorts of investable assets. And I ended up saying, well, who would be stupid enough to put all their money in just a savings account with those numbers? And without missing a beat, he just said, it's a question you might well ask yourself. And it was the way he thought about making me learn, right? Immediately, of course, I realized there were other places to put my paper route money. Right? It really stuck with me, like, oh yeah, don't just think about it for someone else, think about it for yourself. Another big theme in our life was that laughter was really an everyday occurrence. It was part of the fabric of every day. And it was just so much fun. We could, even everyday simple things could be made into a laughing stock of an event. It was not unusual for the three of us kids to enter just a restaurant behind him with our arms outstretched, flying around the restaurant, making airplane noises until we sat down, much to the horror of the waitstaff and my mom. But he thought it was terrific. He thought that was an okay way to enter. It was okay. But he could be irrepressible, not just, out in other people's houses. I remember a situation once when my parents were hosting some good friends who were neighbors. I can't remember why, but they weren't in their house for some reason. They were staying with us. And we were all in the kitchen. He was the last one to enter. And he came in, he was buttoning his cardigan sweater. And he'd missed by a button, right? He was just starting it. And as only a kid can do, I sort of rolled my eyes like, Dad, like, come on, get it together, And without missing a beat, he just stared straight at me, unbuttoned the button, and immediately buttoned it 2 holes off, rather than just a shoulder. And after our family cracked up, the neighbors said, you have a really loud house. You're always laughing. What is it with you guys? Which was really true. And I think most importantly that, Stan made his love very generously available. And it was not so much what he said, but what he did that really mattered. He was big, when we were very young, he was big on nicknames. So all of us had nicknames. Audrey was Odge, Patty was Platypus, I was Bones. And it was a way for him to say, you were special to me. I want to always treat you with that name. And that's what he would always call us in private and sometimes in public too. So nicknames were a big thing. But he never lost those instincts. And so as he went through life, he really wanted to make sure that he was being the loving person he could be, even as we were all much older. And I do remember that many times after our families were joined together, he talked to me about being really the best stepfather he could be in the house. Very important to him. He also really, as I say, he expressed himself in his behavior and what he really had to do when he had to do it most. When the chips were down, that's when he was there for you. And I think this was really most evidenced by my sister Odge, who, when she was a young adult, had a lung collapse, a very serious event. She was in the hospital, and it was a pretty grim sort of situation to be plugged into all the tubes and everything. And when he showed up as the guy who was always in charge and the guy who always knew what to do, He broke down and cried. And I know how much that meant. And it was interesting how, so a year or two later, when you had the other lung collapse, you called him and said, hey, I just need some help. I need a ride. I'm out of breath. I need some help. So he immediately dropped what he was doing, took her to the hospital, and then really took over. He wanted to make sure she wasn't threatened again, so he really took over. He became the case manager. And boy, when he wanted to take over, did he ever. He got the same doctor he wanted there, he got the right medical care. He really made sure that she would recover, and he was there until she was okay. It's really important. So I think what we all felt together was throughout his life, we've been very, very fortunate to have all these years with him where he brought us all this learning and all the laughter and all the love. And today, one more time, he brings us something else. He brought all you together. That's really that's too cool. So thank you so much.